began that would reshape global politics, challenge international alliances, and change millions of lives forever. The Russia-Ukraine war is not just a story of borders and armies. It is a story of history, identity, security, power, and competing visions of the future. But how did two countries with deep historical connections reach a point of war? Historical background: Russia and Ukraine share centuries of history, cultural connections, and complicated political ties. Ukraine became independent after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, choosing its own path as a sovereign state. Over the following decades, Ukraine became divided politically between those who wanted closer relations with Russia and those who supported stronger integration with Europe. The situation changed dramatically in 2014, when protests in Kyiv led to the removal of Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, who had rejected a closer partnership agreement with the European Union. Russia viewed these events as a threat to its influence and security interests. Crimea and the beginning of the conflict. In 2014, Russia took control of Crimea, a strategically important peninsula on the Black Sea, and later organized a referendum that resulted in Crimea joining Russia. Ukraine and most Western governments rejected this move, considering it a violation of Ukraine's territorial integrity. Russian President Vladimir Putin argued that Crimea's historical connection to Russia and the protection of Russian-speaking populations justified the action. Putin also pointed to the example of Kosovo's declaration of independence, arguing that Western countries had created a precedent by supporting Kosovo's separation from Serbia. However, many international experts and governments argued that the situations were legally and historically different. Foreign powers and rising tensions. The conflict was also shaped by the involvement of global powers. NATO expansion after the Cold War became one of Russia's biggest security concerns. Moscow viewed the possibility of Ukraine becoming closer to NATO as a strategic threat. Ukraine and many Western countries argued that every sovereign nation has the right to choose its own alliances. The United States and European countries supported Ukraine politically, economically, and militarily, while Russia accused the West of increasing tensions in the region. These competing interests transformed a regional dispute into a major international confrontation. The full-scale invasion. In February 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The Russian government described the operation as a response to security threats and the need to protect Russian interests. Ukraine and its allies described it as an unprovoked invasion aimed at violating Ukraine's independence and changing its borders by force. The war quickly became the largest military conflict in Europe since the Second World War, causing enormous destruction and a humanitarian crisis. Consequences and global impact. The consequences of the war have been felt far beyond Ukraine. Millions of people have been displaced, thousands of lives have been lost, and entire cities have been damaged. Europe faced an energy crisis, global food supplies were affected, and relations between Russia and the West reached their lowest point in decades. The war also changed NATO, increased military spending in Europe, and created a new era of geopolitical competition. If you'd like to hear more interesting facts about history and world's relationships, please subscribe and press ring button to don't miss anything.